Thanks a million to the CND, to Codepink, to the Stop the War Coalition, and to the No to NATO network, and to everybody who's attending this rally here today. There's no doubt about it, the war in Ukraine is a travesty. It's a travesty for the people of Ukraine, who are dying in their thousands and displaced in their millions. It's a travesty for the people of Russia being crippled under sanctions. And it's a travesty for the international working class, who will now be expected to shoulder the costs. All the worst people have been empowered by this war. The arms merchants, the war hawks, the intelligence agencies, NATO, the far right, the Gulf autocracies, and the fossil fuel industry. Ukraine is a spark in a powder keg. The risks of escalation are profound. All of the world's power blocks are now poised and primed, almost as they were in 1914. And at no point in the last half century have we ever been closer to a generalized conflict. And now again, we even have to live under the threat of a nuclear holocaust. You know, in all of this, it might seem like the anti-war movement being in its worst position ever. War is on everyone's lips. Many ordinary people are actually even demanding war. At home, we're sort of targets. The pro-war establishment no longer dismiss us as irrelevant idealists. Now we're peddling disinformation. We're the enemy within. There are calls to censor us, to banish us from the airwaves. But we should realize this is not a sign of how powerless we are. They don't want to silence us because nobody's listening. They want to silence us because they are afraid that people will listen. This is a moment when the anti-war voice actually has to make a difference. And it's really important that we don't run away from that responsibility. We're actually seeing the re-emergence of inter-imperialist conflict. And it's the duty of the anti-war movement, just as it did in the years before World War I, to be truly independent, to oppose armaments, to oppose militarization, to oppose the logic of imperialism, to oppose the rush to war, and to be loud and clear. Of course, we condemn Russia's war unequivocally, but we're not going to be derailed in that opposition by pretending that NATO and the US didn't have a role in that conflict behind the scenes. The generations of people alive today and the generations of people to come cannot afford war now or ever. We can't afford to finance the arms industry from the public purse, destroying the homelands and lives of our brothers and sisters. We can't afford to shoulder the cost of sanctions, the rocketing energy costs, the runaway inflation, the rising cost of living, the plummeting real wages, all galloping down the tracks at us as a result of this war. In the event that those cheering for NATO to attack Russia get their wish, we cannot afford to send another generation of young lives into the murder machine. And most of all, we actually don't have time for any of this. These are the opening years of a breakdown in the natural systems of our planet. First climate, then biology are beginning to unravel. An emergency is actually threatening our survival. And instead of tackling it, the imperialists on all sides are buying weapons, enlisting armies, and preparing for war. They're even using this war to undo the measures that have already been taken and don't go far enough to deal with the climate crisis. These people are building a massive bonfire, and if we don't stop them, they'll set the world on fire. But, you know, the anti-war movement is global. All working people have a common interest in opposing war. So we join with anti-war comrades in Russia who are risking prison sentences for speaking out, anti-war comrades in Ukraine who are opposing war, even as shells fall from the sky, and the anti-war movement in every country, in saying now more than ever, no to Russia's war, no to NATO, no to inter-imperialist conflict.
Wow, I'm always so inspired by Clare Daly.